A 17-year-old is in jail, accused of facilitating a plan to kill his father and then murdering his accomplice 3 days later.
Every day has been a struggle, trying to maintain my insanity.
We spoke to the family of Shane Payne back in 2022. Police said his son, Shane Payne Jr., is now behind bars after he helped plan and carry out his murder. Payne's family felt uneasy about his death.
Don't know who to trust because we feel like someone set him up.
In 2022, Payne's mother told us his kids were home at the time of his murder on Sandal Drive.
They say somebody just kept throwing rocks at the doors, and then my older grandson answered and went to look to see what was going on, and that's when the masked man came in the house with a gun towards him and forced his way in.
Investigators said 16-year-old Timothy Dixon pulled the trigger on Payne, and days later, Payne Jr. shot and killed his accomplice. Investigators connected the two through evidence and witness interviews.
A 2-year-old cold case was just solved in the most unimaginable way. 17-year-old Shane Payne Jr. was just arrested for the 2022 murder of his own father and longtime friend, who authorities say was Shane's accomplice in the murder of his father. Shane was 15 years old at the time. Back in 2022, around 3:20 in the morning on August 6th, someone living in the Palms at Ortega apartment complex located in Jacksonville, Florida, was walking their dog and discovered the deceased body of 16-year-old Timothy Dixon. Timothy had been shot once in the head and left behind a dark apartment building. Timothy was a very close friend and former neighbor of Shane Jr.'s, and his death came just 3 days after the murder of Shane's father, Shane Payne Sr., who's pictured here. Investigators noted that a single 9mm shell casing was found on the ground near Timothy's body. It was that single shell casing that first started to unravel the cold cases. The casing was submitted to the firearm lab at Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, and it came back with a hit indicating a match to the shell casing recovered from the murder of Shane Payne Sr. Shane Sr. was executed on August 3rd of 2022 while he lay in his bed inside of his home. His murder happened around 11:30 p.m., and investigators said there were several people inside the home at the time, including children ranging from 4 years old to young teenagers. Police said the shooter showed up at the house, walked straight to the back bedroom, shot Shane Sr., and then ran out of the house. They then fled the scene in a stolen car. One of the teenagers who was in the house that night and interviewed by police was Shane Jr., who was 15 years old at the time. He told investigators that he didn't know who the shooter was, but gave a description of a man who was wearing a shiesty mask at the time. A few days later, after Timothy was found dead, police started to realize that the two murders might be connected. While they were investigating Timothy's murder, they started looking at his phone records. The records revealed that Timothy received 4 phone calls from Shane Jr. within an hour of when he was believed to have been shot, which was around 1:30 in the morning. Detectives also found a recent internet search for a shiesty mask, as well as various screenshots of him getting GPS directions to the home where Shane Sr. was murdered, and that Timothy's phone had connected to Shane Sr.'s Wi-Fi network the day he was killed and around the time that he was killed. Timothy had received a phone call from Shane Jr. while his phone was still connected to their Wi-Fi. There were 2 calls between the two teens less than 10 minutes before Shane's father was killed, and then Timothy called Shane once more after it was done. On August 13th, about 2 weeks after the murders of Shane Sr. and Timothy Dixon, officers responded to yet another shooting. In that incident, the shooter was seen on video firing into a crowd of people. Luckily, no one was hurt, but detectives learned that the shell casings from that scene were linked to the murders of both Shane Sr. and Timothy Dixon. The shooter in that case was eventually identified as Shane Jr., and he later pled guilty in 2023. So now detectives had 3 shooting scenes with a connection to Shane Jr. and shell casings that connected them all together, but only one man was still standing and able to use that firearm, Shane Jr. As detectives started putting everything together, they saw that Timothy's final incoming call before his death was from Shane Jr. at around 1:20 in the morning, and witnesses in the neighborhood said they could recall hearing a gunshot around 1:30. So Shane Jr. was interviewed again after he got himself arrested once more for another violent incident. And this time he admitted to being at the complex where Timothy was killed. But he claimed that when he last saw him, Timothy was alive and well. However, his phone records and the shell casings proved otherwise. So investigators were finally able to establish that Shane Jr. plotted with Timothy Dixon to kill his own father, Shane Sr. He then decided to tie up his loose ends and get rid of the only witness to his conspiracy, his friend Timothy. So 3 days later, he killed his friend. And then investigators were finally able to conclude that it was actually Shane Jr. who let Timothy into the house the night his father was killed. Shane Jr. was already in jail for other unrelated incidents when he was notified that he is now being charged with 2 counts of second-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder. He is being held without bond, and a court date for his murder cases has not been set.